fear. It's fear. It's just fear. Just a viscera is what they used to say.
Just viscera.
Just a viscera, which is not even a proper use of the word. Going back to loaded language, you said earlier, that's very much a NXIVM term. If I'm feeling uncomfortable, which is like a sign to listen to your body, they say, what if it's just a viscera? It's just a feeling in your body.
Welcome to High Agency, igniting conversations with inspiring people, leading transformative change. The search for self-improvement begins with hope. It's a desire to grow, evolve, or heal. But sometimes that human yearning becomes the very thing that renders us weak and vulnerable. The self-improvement industry is projected to reach nearly $57 billion by 2027. And it's a sign of our collective hunger for transformation. And within this booming marketplace, there's a bit of a disturbing pattern. Almost 70% of cult members say that they joined simply for personal growth or community, not recognizing or ready for the psychological manipulation that waited for them. This promise of transformation is really seductive, and we're drawn into those who offer answers, purpose, and belonging, especially when it's packaged in the glossy language of self-improvement. And self-improvement seems such a mild and innocuous virtue, doesn't it? After all, self-improvement, it's not some esoteric dogma or violently religious orthodoxy. Or is it? Within the vast waters of this self-help industry lurk organizations like NXIVM, which masqueraded as a path to personal growth, while its leader, Keith Raniere, orchestrated a web of abuse, forced labor, and psychological manipulation, ultimately leading to his capture and in 2019, his sentencing to 120 years in prison. Now, what's particularly chilling isn't just that women in the innermost circles of NXIVM were branded with Raniere's initials to establish a master-slave relationship. It's that it was remarkably intelligent, successful people who found themselves entangled in what prosecutors described as a pyramid scheme built on sexual exploitation. So modern cults have evolved. They don't need to isolate their followers in remote compounds. They operate in plain sight. They're leveraging social media, slick branding, and the language of empowerment. And they're not looking for the vulnerable and desperate, but the educated and the ambitious, those that are seeking meaning and community. Today, we're joined by someone who knows this reality intimately. Sarah Edmondson is a multifaceted talent with over 40 film and TV credits to her name as an actor and as a voiceover artist. Sarah risked everything as a whistleblower against NXIVM. Her courageous escape helped liberate others and bring down one of the most notorious cults of our time. Sarah wrote the book Scarred, detailing her escape from NXIVM, and she co-hosts the A Little Bit Culty podcast with her husband, Anthony Ames, where they explore the fine line between devotion and destruction. She's been featured in HBO's The Vow, and Sarah dedicates herself to helping others identify and avoid abusive situations while balancing her roles as artist, entrepreneur, and mother. Sarah.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I was mentioning before we started that I'm super nervous for this conversation, just because I feel like a certain intimacy of knowing you from both watching the documentary and then reading the book, which was just so vividly written, by the way. Like the language, it was like I was spellbound the entire time. And we're going to get into your experience, of course, and what you've been through and what you're doing now. But to start off, I want to read a passage from your book.
Okay.
And it's actually a picture that you took of some of the materials that you were given as exercises as a part of this seeming self-improvement program. And in this particular section, you were writing, your mission statement, which was meant to be the embodiment of your essence, purpose, and unencumbered values. So at this time, you wrote, "My mission is to use and develop my creative and entrepreneurial skills to build value in a joyous, compassionate, inspiring way. To share the values of growth and introspection as I learn to know and love myself, and to create world-changing force that inspires awareness, love, and peace, and consequently evolves humanity."
You're gonna make me cry.
I mean, what a beautiful intention. And there's just so much heart and inspiration and generosity, frankly, for what you wanted for yourself and others in the world around you. And this was your starting point, right? And I think for anybody that thinks of anything extreme, whether it's an abusive relationship or a full-blown cult, we sometimes think about them at a distance, right? It's those people over there. I couldn't possibly, I know too much, I'm too aware. But I have to admit to you that in preparing for this episode even, wound up watching a lot of content from Keith Raniere, both that was a part of the documentary and past interviews. And what's remarkable now, again, having the vantage point and perspective of knowing who and what he is, but what's remarkable going back and watching those interviews is just how freaking reasonable everything sounded, right? From like accountability to how to live your life and, that comfort is a poison and you need discomfort and friction in order to break through and get to the next level of your own being and this is language I use, right? And so just the sheer reasonability from the most normie of norms of men that you've ever seen.
Yeah.
It was quite disarming.
Yeah.
Right. And in that vein, it's actually not surprising that he would build audience and, connect with people, right? First on a human level, and then later on, unfortunately, as quote unquote followers of his. So let's get to the core of what you were thinking and feeling, which was now 20 years ago, when you started down this self-improvement journey.
Yeah. Well, first of all, don't be nervous. I'm very normal now. I'd like to say I'm not going to try to recruit you, because if I'd met you 20 years ago, I totally would have. So that's good.
That's excellent. Yeah. I'm very vulnerable to that. Yeah. Impressionable.
And I also want to say I really appreciate you taking the time to read it and also to do that research, because I feel like when people hear about what happened to me and they sort of read the headlines, they say and think things like, well, that could never happen to me and I never would have fallen for that. But you're absolutely right. The things that he was teaching on the outset were very reasonable, very practical, very helpful. And I found at a time in my life when I really wanted all those things and was very open to it and did have a very idealistic, and why I was emotional reading it when you read it, is because I did and still do have a very idealistic view of the world. And that hasn't totally changed. And also the irony of, having this big mission that I get to do now with the podcast and on the other side of things is kind of all full circle. So that's where that emotion came from. And I also haven't read that since the book came out almost 5 years ago now. So, yes. What did you just ask me? You asked me what?
Essentially where this journey started.
Where did it start?
Because 20 years ago, you had that intention of what you wanted for yourself in the world. And you were starting down this sort of self-improvement journey to break through in your career and your life and, essentially be a better person.
Yeah.
Right.
And that mission statement came out of the curriculum. I'd say before I joined NXIVM, I didn't necessarily have that so clear, but I knew that I wanted more in my life than the opportunities that acting was providing for me, which I could only really, have a certain amount of control over. Acting is great when you're on set. It's not great when you're hustling and auditioning and, trying to be a part of other people's projects. I didn't like the lack of agency that I had, to use your own words here. And that's what really appealed to me with NXIVM. By the way, it was called Executive Success Programs at the time. Anyone here in Vancouver?
I've heard of that.
Yeah, that's what it was called. We didn't use the word NXIVM. That came later. So people were taking ESP executive success. And that's very benign term. It sounded great. Learn to be an executor in your own life. And as somebody who was a struggling, aspiring actress, it was provided a lot of tools that I needed.
I think that's one of the sort of recurring themes, in this whole realm, right? Like not just with you, but in this kind of realm of the modern cult, is this blurred lines. It's like this weird game of two truths and a lie, but at a massive scale, because these things get shared, or you put through these exercises that are actually kind of beneficial, right? I mean, I didn't have anywhere close to the experience or abuse that you suffered, but over a decade ago, there was this kind of variant of the Landmark Forum that I was a part of, and it was actually designed and delivered by Werner Erhard and Michael C. Jensen. And
I remember this.
Do you really? It was at UBC, and we were sequestered, I think, for like 8 days or something. 12-hour days.
Do you remember the name of the program?
The ontological, phenomenological, something leadership. And it was the most clinical sounding thing you'd ever heard.
Yep.
Yeah. Were you there?
No, but the person who ran it and organized it was just a whistleblower for that program on our podcast.
Oh my God.
Ann Peterson.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah, I know all about this. Yes.
So, all right.
Yeah, tell me.
Sounds like I'm going to share my cult story first.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting this.
Yeah.
So as a part of this leadership program, which, I didn't actually pay for, because
Who paid for it?
The person that brought it to UBC was like begging me to show up,
Okay.
right? Recruiting, right?
Yeah.
And me being, extremely cheap and self-important at the time, I was like, I'm too busy and I don't want to pay for this. And like months and weeks went by, and finally it was like, I think 2 weeks before the thing was set to start. And he's like, okay, I got you a seat. It's free. Can you just show up and take this bloody thing for free? I was like, yep, I'm in. And again, the way it was sold, leadership, breakthrough, connect with yourself, all of that. I'm like, these are things that I also aspire to. I want to be a better person. I want to be a better leader. And so we showed up to this thing, and it was my first experience with like that level of conditioning and also neuro-linguistic programming, because everything from bathroom breaks to nutrition was controlled, right? And it was 12-hour days. We were sat in this large auditorium and in chairs, right? So it was a flat environment, projection screen, and a binder in front of us. And we were basically reading along on these super dense slides that were just filled with text as somebody read them out. And that would go on for 2 hours at a time, right? And so we're meant to read along, and there was times when I'm just like dozing a little bit, but like it's super loud, so you can't really fall asleep either. And then in between, there's like these workshops and these sessions. And parts of it, again, I didn't have the language at the time to describe it, but parts of it, day two, felt a little bit culty. And I was kind of like, okay, this is why people that exit Landmark always sound so weird, because they're using what Werner Erhard at the time described as terms of art. And so this weird codified language they use to describe things that if you're not an insider, you wouldn't know, right? And so, of course, when you go to a dinner party and you're using these terms and language with no context, it's going to sound like you're a part of some weird club or some cult, because you're using these phrases that nobody else has ever heard of. So fast forward to the fourth day, and I think one of my saving graces was like I have a lot of issues with authority. So I got into a little bit of a conflict with Werner Erhard. So I was like half checked in, half checked out of the program. He really liked me.
I bet he did.
Sorry?
I bet he did.
Yeah. And so, coming out of it, I felt like there were some exercises that were really valuable, right? There was this thing we did where we're kind of deconstructing the stories you tell yourself in order to excuse your behaviors or your ways of showing up.
Called stories, right? They call it stories.
Yeah. And so there's these super beneficial aspects, right? But there was also people in the room, and there's only 80 of us, right? There's people in the room that for them, this was like their 10th or 12th thing that they had done. And this is just a part of their regular lives, and they do this all the time, right? And so interacting with them was kind of the weirdest part, because to me, it felt like, okay, this is an exercise. I'm here to get something out of it, level up and move on. But if that's what you're doing, then why would somebody need to do this thing that they say this is like their 10th or 12th time doing it, right?
Good question.
Yeah. So that seemed a little odd to me. And I was like, okay, so I think people are just, maybe they're being self-important, or they're so worried about the mechanics of it that they're turning it into the mechanics without just taking the lesson and going and living their lives, right? And I thought that and left it there and didn't really even think about it again. But it wasn't years later when other stories started coming out, when you hear about, not only NXIVM, but just kind of a lot of the abuses that were going on in that sort of fabric, because it seems like ESP, Landmark, and a bunch of other these cohorts were kind of doing some of the same stuff at that time and continue to, right?
Yeah.
So that was the extent of my intersection and experience with any part of this world. But that's also where I could kind of see some of what you had been through and describing, because I'm like, I was in a room where
it's very similar.
It's very similar, and the conditioning was happening, right? When, like you're told that you can't go to the bathroom, and there's people around you that you can tell are struggling to like stay seated.
Yeah. That was 2008?
That was 2012, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm going to send you Ann Peterson's book, and you'll see her journey. And even when she wrote the book till now, she was sort of like, is it a cult? Is there, there's a line of between, she calls it transformation and exploitation. And we've had her on the podcast talking about Landmark. And it's the one episode in our 200 plus episodes that we could do more. We could do so much more, but we're like, they're so litigious.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so litigious. But also the most requested topic is Landmark in the forum since we started the podcast. People want to know. And a lot of people get, similar to NXIVM. I mean, ESP here in Vancouver can come and take like a peripheral course, put the tools in your life, move on, and you're fine. But the people who like make the tools their lives and really dedicate themselves, they get screwed. And there's stories, and we have recordings of Werner hitting people, strangling people, throwing beverages at people. It's highly, highly abusive, allegedly. I have to be careful what I say. You can cut that if you want. But I would have loved to have met him. He's a legend,
Well, my first-hand experience was that, a real carrot and stick guy, mostly stick. And occasionally when he kind of put out an emotional carrot, like he really hung a lantern on it. Like he wanted you to know and wanted everybody else around you to know that I'm being nice to you right now.
Yeah.
But, kind of like a bit of a rageful personality.
Oh, yeah.
Beyond that. So the thing of like, is it a cult? Is it not a cult? The blurred lines is the thing that keeps coming up time and time again. And I think the confusing instinct is that when you're in a bad environment and you're going through something that is traumatic and hurtful, there's a sort of encouragement to ignore your own instincts and to conflate that with the friction that we all go through when we're experiencing growth and character formation and we're doing something hard, right? So on some level, your instinct is saying, this is hurting me. Get out. And I was going to say enjoyed, but I just so felt that part that you wrote where there's multiple points you're shouting down your instincts. Your instincts are screaming at you. But by this point, they've kind of really like adapted, the story to say, actually, this is your character formation. This is growth happening. This is, the growing pains.
And also fear. It's fear. It's just fear. Just a viscera is what they used to say.
Just viscera.
Just a viscera, which is not even a proper use of the word. Going back to loaded language, you said earlier, that's very much a NXIVM term. If I'm feeling uncomfortable, which is like a sign to listen to your body, they say, what if it's just a viscera? It's just a feeling in your body. And the analogy they used to give is that if you have a car and there's a light that goes on when the gas is out, like that's helpful, right? Or there's a light that goes on if there's an engine broken, right? That's helpful. But if the light goes on because the light's broken, that means that the signal is broken. So they're saying your feeling that something's wrong is just a broken signal. That's so bad.
Wow.
It's so bad because it really dismantled our ability to think for ourselves and trust our gut. But you're right. It's very much mixed in with, if you remember my first 5 day, I'm sitting there, I'm nervous and I'm being confronted with things I've never looked at before. Those things are all happening at the same time. It's really hard to know what's helpful and what's my natural body inclination to get the F out. Can I swear on this podcast? Is this
absolutely,
get
go for
the fuck out of there?
Yeah.
Which is really what I should have done. But I also wanted to get my money's worth, and I also wanted to please the person who invited me because I wanted to work with him, Mark Vicente, and no beef towards him. He didn't know he invited me to. But there's all these things happening at the same time. And we'll take a little tangent for a second. This happened so long ago, and I've learned so much, and I have my own podcast now, and I talk to so many people, and I'm still learning this lesson, Mo. Like, I had an interaction with somebody that I had red flags going off, but I was sort of like, the train was already moving on this project, and I brushed under the rug and gave this person the benefit of the doubt, and thought, he's just having a bad day. That, as soon as you have this is my lesson for you and your audience, whoever is listening, when you have a bad feeling with somebody, listen to that. It's not going to get better. As soon as you have it, like, I don't like being around this person, or this person's being a dick or a douche or mean or is mean to somebody else, cut it. Cut ties, cut and run. Don't try to make it work. Don't say he's having a bad day. Still learning this lesson. And I'm so mad at myself that this happened recently. Not in a cult context, just in an interpersonal dynamic.
Yeah. But some of the remnants of like shutting down the instinct.
Yeah. Well, also because I'm still, not like I went through this process and all of a sudden I'm no longer a people pleaser. I still am a bit of an accommodator, and I want to keep the peace. I'm not a like no bullshit, like totally speak my truth all the time. I'd like to be more. But in that instant with this person, I should have been like, you don't talk to me that way, and I'm not going to do business with you. So fuck off.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, okay, well, because we had a conflict, and like tried to smooth it over. Anyway.
And that happens, I think, in spaces and with people that have like higher purpose, right? It can be used against you because you're here for the bigger thing. Yeah. And so therefore all the smaller things should be, not forgotten about, but, dismissed, right?
Yeah.
As being less important.
Exactly.
But, you said people pleaser, but also like kind of high performance. Because when I was reading about you and, in that early period when you were in the executive success program, and then first kind of getting things started, and even moving into like the recruitment side of actually bringing more people into these trainings. I mean, you were a bit of a killer. Like you recruited like crazy. You built a whole power center around this group and this training here in Vancouver. But you were very high performance, right? And and I'm sure, and I understood that, quite happy and proud of yourself for doing so well.
Yeah, at the time. Yeah, I mean, I'm proud of myself that I developed the skills. I'm not proud of myself that I brought so many people in, but I was really good at sharing what we thought NXIVM or ESP was. And if it was what it was supposed to have been, it would have been great.
Yeah.
So I was a living embodiment of it. And I believed it with my whole heart. So I didn't even have to hard sell people. I was just like living the dream. And people would want to know about it. And then I tell them, and then they do it. Yeah.
Of course. It's like, how is she doing it? Maybe we can access that as well. And, the paradoxes and these conflations. So this is the one of like the high demand groups versus the cults, right? Is this like, am I a part of a, like an exercise class, right? That's really hard and it's going to build me up, or has it flipped over to the other side where it's destructive? But there's a couple of acronyms we're going to throw around in this conversation. And just for the sake of getting clarity, because, even throughout your book, I was at points getting lost because I would forget which one kind of came first and how the structure builds. But, NXIVM is the story. That's what we're connected to with Keith Raniere. And underneath that, there was kind of like these sub-chapters that kind of fed up to him. So there was acronyms like Jeunesse, ESP, the Executive Success Program, SOP, the Society of Protectors, and then DOS. Sorry, I forgot what did DOS stand for?
Dominus Obsequious Sororium or something like that. Some Latin hodgepodge that he made up.
Sure.
But I think he loved making names that meant something else. Like DOS, he was a computer nerd. So
I wondered about that.
Oh yeah, that was a little like chuckle for himself, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. NXIVM also comes from the root word nexum. I think this is in my book, which is like Latin for debt bondage or something. So indentured servitude. Yeah. Great. Yeah.
So it wasn't NXIVM at the outset then?
No. It was Executive Success Programs. It was the first thing that he created.
And then how did it evolve to what it became?
I wasn't actually part of that decision. So at some point they started using the word NXIVM as an umbrella for all these companies. And when I started with executive success programs, like a year later, they rolled out Jeunesse, which was for women. And then the men were complaining. So they rolled out Society of Protectors. And then he did this whole thing called Ultima, which was a new series of programs. And there was like 5 programs under that. The Source for acting, the Knife for media. I can't remember all of them. Oh, XOSO, which was like a yoga, physical, Pilates hodgepodge that he stole from a bunch of other modalities. Somewhere around there, I believe that, and this is, I'm not certain about this, but from my understanding is the executive success programs got a bit of a bad name because the Bronfman family was involved and the father Edgar didn't like it and hired somebody from Forbes to write a hit piece. And that's, if you like Google Forbes Keith Raniere, there's a picture of him and like as a coach in a white robe and all these like acolytes looking at him. And so they tried to rebrand and focus on NXIVM. And then when we got out, Mark Vicente and the other whistleblowers and I decided that instead of calling out executive success and Jeunesse and SOP and all these things, we would just use the word NXIVM so that people would understand that there's an organization called NXIVM and there's programs within it. So that's why people know of NXIVM so much and not so much executive success.
Got it. And I've got to say, like, as a brand and marketing person, when you look at some of the communications from that area, like pretty shit hot brand, right? I mean, giving a self-improvement organization that promises all of these things, personal transformation, world-changing performance, and make it look like that. And on the surface alone, I'm, I guess, a horribly superficial person, but on the surface alone, it's incredibly attractive, right? It's like, it's something you'd want to be a part of.
But their branding, you should have seen like when I joined, it had this like, do you remember in the late 90s, early 2000s when like Japanese tattoos were really hot? Do you remember what I'm talking about? They would have like a little stamp here. That's what their branding was. It was like Japanese symbols on the side. And then eventually they changed it to this like matrixy star thing that looks like the star on your Apple Watch when it first loads. We had that awful website, I want to say to like 2013. The one you see in the Vow is a more updated one, but it looked like it was made in 1997 because that's when it was made. And we were always pushing them to like fix the branding, even the sashes. Like that, when we went into Hollywood and did 5-day trainings at like celebrity homes, we were like, can we not do the sashes? Because it's embarrassing. We knew that would turn people off, and it did.
So talk about the sashes a little bit.
Oh yeah, sashes.
Because there was a whole gradient, almost like martial arts style, where there's certain colors that meant certain things and you get stripes on the colored sash. And all I could think about as you were kind of, talking about your performance and your work and your yearning to kind of break through to the next level, it wasn't so much like the aspiration of it, but the structure of it. It just reminded me so much of like the castes and system in India, right?
Sure.
I mean, mind you, that is thousands of years old. And when it comes to closed loop manipulation, like India does it best. And there's no movement from one level to the other, right? That's very, very locked in place. But the idea that the closed loop exists and that any behavior, any amount of oppression or violence or inequality can be justified, right? You can come up with reasons for it. There's a classism next to it that, maybe is providing some mobility in between castes, but not really, right? Not for hundreds of millions of people. So I just couldn't help but continue thinking about that. I was like, wow, they actually created this weird caste system that categorized humanity in this like microcosm, right? But also gave you a little bit of hope that
to get to the next level.
That you let yourself be exploited just enough, and we can get you through.
Yeah. So the stripe path, I have such an interesting journey with it because my first 5-day, and I think I said this in the book, they present you with this white sash, and for those who are watching at home, it's this like 2 inches by 2 inches, like a scarf, and it's satin, and it was white. And then the people who were the coaches were wearing yellow. And then the people who were teaching, who were like the senior coaches, were orange, proctors, they were called. And then, haven't thought about this in a while, green was senior proctor, and then blue was counselor, and purple was senior counselor. And that's as high as it went. There's only two purples, 1 blue, 12 greens, and I don't know, 45 oranges when I started, or by the time I left. And then the very top was prefect, who was a gold sash because he was the head of the school, and then Keith Raniere, who had a double white long sash because he's forever a student. So humble, right? It's faux humble guru bullshit. And I didn't like it at first. And one of the things they very smartly did is they said, this is like martial arts. This is a measurement, a system for growth. And how amazing that this is the first time in personal development that you could actually measure your growth. Now, if that statement was true, that would have been amazing, because it's true. There's no measurable scientific way to prove that you're growing and that you're happy internally. Like you can measure your success, money wise, or however you want to set the bar. But like, are you working through your issues? How do you measure that? And so this was supposed to be that. And that was really appealing to me, especially as an actor, because you can hustle and not achieve results. And now I could do X, Y, Z and I could get my stripe. So every color had 4 stripes that were marked by things that you had to demonstrate that you could do, just like in martial arts. And my boys are in now jiu-jitsu, but at the time taekwondo, and I've seen them get their stripes and get their belts, and it's like a little triggering, but it's also like, this is what it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. So at the time and at the beginning, it was great for me because I went from a very immeasurable, nebulous career to a measurable system of growth. And at that, when it was amazing for me, good for my self-esteem.
Mm-hmm. Because you were able to progress.
Yeah, I was able to progress. Whereas as a kid, I was very much like, well, if I'm not good at it, I'm just going to stop doing it naturally. Like if I have to push really hard and learn, like I was never good at practicing. I was never good at being consistent with swimming lessons, piano lessons, ballet. I just sort of like, well, other people are better, and I'll just kind of give up on things. Mm-hmm. So this was a way for me to evolve, and that felt really good. And it was the first time I really stuck to it.
Mm-hmm. And they did a lot of that. Like there was, these invented rituals, ceremonies. They kind of created their own system of dogmas. Right?
Yes.
So these hashes were one. What were some of the others? I mean, there was the extreme one. We'll get to that. But
yeah.
What were some of the others?
Of the rules and rituals?
Yeah.
Calling people by their title within NXIVM. So I became, eventually, it was a green sash when I left. So I was a senior proctor Edmondson. Mm-hmm. So people called me that, senior proctor. And we called each other that. Like if I saw Nancy in the center, I'd call her prefect or P. Vanguard, mm-hmm. Keith, V. Every time we entered the space, we would do a little bow to honor the space, like a dojo. We'd take our shoes off in the space. At the beginning and the end of every class, we had like a special thing that we did. We'd go get into a circle in the room and repeat the 12-point mission statement. Success is an internal state of clear, honest knowledge of what I am, my value in the world, and my responsibility for the way I react to all things. That was point 1. I don't know if I can do all 12, but that was
impressive.
Thank you. Thanks. Wow. It's in there still, unfortunately. Yeah. I mean, that could be a whole other episode, just taking the mission statement and breaking down the points and what was good and how it was used as bad also. And at the end of every class, we'd go, thank you, Vanguard. Thank you, Prefect. Thank you, Proctors. And thank everybody in the room. And it was, that part of, I like the constant thanking people and the level of gratitude for where things came from and who created what was something that's really lovely. And I still kind of practice. I always thank my yoga teacher when I leave yoga. I always thank my server. I'm very aware of like people's roles and interdependence, and that part is nice. Keith didn't invent that though. Mm-hmm. Keith did not invent gratitude.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but the kind of exploitation of it into a structure of conditioning, obedience.
Right? And also like putting, to always go, thank you, Vanguard, after every class. Thank you, Vanguard. So by the time I met Vanguard, he was on a pedestal mm-hmm. for me. And I had a massive amount of respect for him because he'd created this amazing curriculum that changed my life. So that everything has a purpose.
Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about language a little bit. Like we touched on it a little bit so far, but just the amount of construction of language that was going on.
Yeah.
There's I want to make a totally tangential reference here, but like Steve Jobs, mm-hmm. right? People used to talk about the fact that they would go into a meeting with him so sure about some direction for a product or what they wanted to do. And they would enter what they called Steve's reality distortion field. Mm. And after a conversation with him, they would leave having a completely different idea of like how the world works, what the product should do, and their role in it. And they described it that way. They're like, it's Steve's reality distortion field. He's got a really strong will, but also a powerful way of communicating, right? And that obviously led to, incredible product breakthroughs. We don't need to get into that. We know all about that. But throughout this, it was like there's so many of these things that Werner Erhard used to call terms of art, where you take something that is basic and easily explained in plain English, but you develop this weird new vocabulary for it, and you have your own glossary of terms, and now viscera, right? And other things. You're now referencing this other glossary and this other language to describe the experiences you're having as a human that should be common to all of us. But
it's called loaded language in the cult space, cult recovery space. The leadership is loading the language so it means a certain thing to the group, and it has a lot of benefit. Creates like a secret code, a secret club. You know, if I meet you and you've done ESP, and even me saying like, you know, how are you doing with your goals? Like goals means something different beyond just goals. Like it's a whole world of meaning.
Yeah.
So you're changing the meaning of a word to connect people, and also to sort of access a whole bunch of feelings. Like that's where the neurolinguistic programming comes in. You're like almost downloading the word with extra meaning, so it hits you in a different way. So what were you? So I interrupted you though. What were you going to ask?
No. Actually, you pretty much answered it. Like it was just, you know, what's the reason for that? But I guess it's you know, you create some amount of exclusion, right? Because if it's language that only we understand, then there's some exclusion there. But also just the I guess I'm still just surprised at, you know, how much it changes and shapes your reality. Like I still can't get over just the viscera aspect, right? Like what an incredible psychological scalpel to use on somebody to invent a word that they will actually then inflict on themselves to continually disconnect themselves from their own emotions and instincts. Yeah. Incredible.
And there are so many things like that in the space. That there's another term because of loaded language, like thought. It's called a thought terminating cliche. So if I'm a leader and I want you to stop complaining or stop asking questions or having doubts, I can say things to you that'll just stop it. Like you're whatever, talking about something you're upset about. You just you're in resistance. Oh, I'm in resistance. I'll just stop resisting then and just like keep going along with the program. Or in NXIVM would be like, you seem upset. You might want to journal on that. Go get an EM. So it's like, not only is your complaint not valid, but you need to go do some work because there's something going on with you. So it's gaslighting. All of this, by the way, there's a woman named Amanda Montal who wrote a book called Cultish, and she's a linguist, and her whole book is about the loaded language in cults and how it's everywhere. And once you see it, you'll see it everywhere. You'll see it just in like how the government rolls out a new whatever with certain buzzwords like sustainability or systems or whatever. Like these things have meaning to cultures and to people and to groups, and there's a lot of purpose in that. And you once you see it, you can't miss it.
Yeah. No, and I mean, just because of the work I do, I have an appreciation for it. Because I have so many times walked into a meeting and talked to a client and been like, well, you know, we create worlds with language, and we first have to describe the world we're going to live in with language so we can live into blah, 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 right? Like cult leader style.
Yeah. But you probably have good intentions, I would hope.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah.
Well, and actually, on that note, let's talk about intentions a little bit. Because, you know, we know what happened with NXIVM. We know what your role within that was. But I want to talk a little bit about Keith Raniere.
Sure.
You know, I think at this point in the story, to look at him and everything that he did and ascribe, you know, a lot of intentions there, right, of how and why he did certain things. And, you know, I think those are all entirely valid, of course. But this phrase that was kind of stuck in my head as I was watching some of his interviews was this idea of like good and evil, right? Because in places he was described as evil and whatnot. And it made me think of like, you know, every good villain you've ever seen anywhere. It's like, you know, like it's the cartoonish villains are the ones that are like gleefully rubbing their hands together and trying to be evil. The true villains are the ones that actually think that by destroying the world that they'll improve it, right? That if I can only kill all these people and remake the world in this image, that then, you know, humanity will be so much better and I'm actually improving things, right? And so I wondered about Keith Raniere to say that, like, was it true manipulation where he understands his internal agenda and is just so good at putting on an act, employing so many different tactics to manipulate people around him to fulfill his agenda? Or did he like believe his own bullshit first? Yeah. Like, was he fully delusional and, you know, perhaps till today continues to believe his delusions and they've just been interrupted. Like,
I don't really know for sure. And unfortunately, most people like Keith don't subject themselves to be evaluated, in that way. My theory is that he turned, and actually the terminology that he taught us in NXIVM is that when people, he calls it taking the fall. In other words, I'm going to get all NXIVM nerdy for a minute with a bunch of terminology. In NXIVM, we learned that people have options in the world to operate in business. And there's with the morality, that includes, being honest. And then on this other side, there's this whole way of operating that I'm assuming, because it's based on who we both know and who you are, that you would not lie, steal, and cheat, for example, in order to achieve your goals. Mm-hmm. But someone who's taken the fall understands that most people are over here, and these are the options, which relates to their self-esteem. And then there's the people over here who have all the negative, no morality options, and their self-esteem is way higher because they have a whole range of options that nobody else would do, or most people won't do, unless you're one of these people. He taught us about this. Those are the suppressives, people out in the world who have no morality and no consciousness. I believe he's one of those people, and he figured that out at a young age, that he could operate and look like this person, but be this person. Mm-hmm. And I think somewhere along the lines, he also believed his delusion. So I think it might be both, but I don't think he's somebody like in the cults that we've looked at in A Little Bit Culty. There's a lot of people where I feel like they did start out with good intentions, like certain yoga teachers who started like a new kind of power yoga.
Bikram.
I don't know about him. Maybe. I don't know him enough, but people like him. There are some people like him that did genuinely wanted to teach yoga and then really enjoyed being, adored by all these beautiful women in tight leggings, and then that got to their heads, and then they became kind of predatory. That's different. Mm-hmm. I believe Keith started out with the intentions of manipulating and really wanted to bring in Nancy to start a school where he could create something of value, because I think he realized that's how cults have to operate. You have to create something of value to be the sticky honey on the outside to draw people in. Mm-hmm. So he created NXIVM with Nancy, and then was like, he just wanted a fresh supply of money and women and power. And that's really what he wanted. It wasn't ever intended to grow as big as Landmark because he didn't need that. He didn't need that many women.
Yeah. It was a personal ambition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my theory.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's a good one. And again, like I said, you watch those videos and just disarmingly reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With his little professorial vibe and, I don't know. And he pushes up his glasses and just kind of is a humble, nerdy,
just nerdy little normie dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit schlubby. Normie, like that.
So we talked about this instinct that you had, that you was maybe a little bit quieter in the beginning, but as things got more extreme, I think your ability to suppress that instinct got more extreme.
Yeah.
But that instinct got louder as well. Mm-hmm. And at some point there was a turning point.
Yeah.
So can you talk about the turning point of when, in this sort of era of performance, you had built up the Vancouver Center, you had recruited so many people into this way and this path, mm-hmm. Where it finally turned for you and you said, okay, actually, this is it. I've crossed the threshold, but I need to come back now.
A lot of things that led up to that.
Mm-hmm.
In our pod, we use the metaphor of putting things on a shelf. So I had things that I'd put on my shelf, things that don't sit right, but always outweighed by the good stuff. And that shelf had been loaded since day one, even with the sashes and all the things that felt uncomfortable, I put away. I think what first caused me to pull back was when I had my son. So this is 2014, 3 years before leaving. And that kind of forced me to reevaluate my values hierarchy, which, as you know from the book, is something they kind of get you to do at the beginning. Mm. And if you're going to grow and you're going to go up the straight path, I think I started with creative expression, health and wellness and personal growth. And personal growth, aka NXIVM, has to get to the top if you're going to advance. Mm-hmm. So at that point, personal growth kind of became under a family. Mm-hmm. So it just caused me to pull back a bit, which is when the leadership, kind of tried to hook me in with more. That's when I got my green sash, which I'd been trying to get for years.
Gave you the carrot.
They gave me the carrot, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm back on the horse. That feels great. I got the dopamine hit of the award. Mm-hmm. I'm very much a well-trained mouse with the gold stars. I have a little gold star on my jean jacket now, so give myself the gold star. Mm-hmm. I don't even look for it from others. It's part of my growth. But the main turning point was once they felt me pulling back, that's when I got invited. And this is way too complex to explain in a 1-hour podcast. So I do encourage people to read the book, but I got invited to a secret women's group that had a number of steps that were more and more binding. I was basically being blackmailed. Mm-hmm. And at this point, I knew that I wanted out of that. And I knew that it was bad because as it got more and more, the control got turned up very quickly, and it wasn't what I signed up for. And I knew that I had to get out of that. And I was trying to figure out how to blow it up. And at the same time, Mark Vicente, the person who brought me in, my business partner in opening the center over here at 505 West Georgia, by the way, it's like right around the corner. Mm-hmm. He was leaving because his wife had left. And finally, I was able to have a conversation with him where he had found out certain things. I had known certain things, and we shared that information, and that basically allowed us to see a bigger picture, which was the pyramid scheme on female exploitation. Mm-hmm. So that's when my shelf broke. Yeah. So people talk about like, what's the moment that you wake up? You wake up when the shelf can't hold all the things anymore. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't one thing, but that's when it broke.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is meaningful that, that point was like close to, you having a child.
Yeah.
Right? Because there was so much focus on like isolation and encouraging this sort of like solitary way of being like throughout. Mm-hmm. And it seems kind of, almost obvious now in hindsight that people that had meaningful connections with, whether it was a partner or with family, or in this case, mm-hmm. A child, which is imagining a transformative event in your life, mm-hmm. that sort of isolationist and solitary thinking and mode isn't gonna work as well.
Yeah, they did not want you to have anything meaningful outside of the group that was more important than the group. Mm-hmm. And that's 100% what happened when I had a kid. Mm-hmm. This is a priority.
Yeah. And some of the conditioning you mentioned, like I'm really bad at replying to text messages or WhatsApp or whatever. And so it was wild to me on multiple levels. That part of the conditioning was that state of readiness that you had to be in, of receiving a text and needing to respond within like 60 seconds or something. Like how long does that go on for?
Again, that happened slowly over time. That was like, it started with when I first joined back in 2005, we had to check in with our coach every day to make our daily commitments count. We like committed to like, I'm going to do ab work every day or floss my teeth or build some new habit. And it didn't count. You had to get to day 30 for it to build the habit. It didn't count unless you checked in with your coach. If you didn't, you went back to 1. So they were starting accountability really simply. And then when they developed SOP, they were doing these readiness drills. Ready for what? We never found out. But they would say, are you ready? And you had to respond. I would say, I'd have to go back and look at my notes, but like 3 or 4 years before I left of just doing readiness drills, but it got more and more extreme. It was just at noon Pacific, so 3 Eastern. So you knew when it was going to happen. And then it became that it could happen anytime. That was called C-level readiness. What was B-level and A-level? I don't know. We never got there. Mm-hmm. So, but that also meant that you couldn't go dark. Like you couldn't turn your phone off. Mm-hmm. And then that was when it really started to fuck with my sleep, because my readiness drill could happen at 2 a.m.
Yeah. Actually just caught some of the language there, going dark.
Yeah, going dark.
Some of the messages were like dark in the elevator, undark out of the elevator, or dark in the car.
And I got in trouble for going dark in the car. They thought I should be able to respond from the car. I said, I'm not doing that here in Vancouver. I'm not going to risk getting a ticket or hurting my child. That's what the one area where I had a voice and managed to push back. I was like, sorry, no. Mm-hmm.
So things are ramping up. The control's getting more extreme. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, your instincts are also screaming louder. Mm-hmm. But for a period, maybe not loud enough, and not before something really, really physical and horrible happens.
Yes.
And I feel a little guilty bringing this up, but you've written a book on the topic, so I'm also feeling like,
I'm an open book. Yes.
Okay.
But I appreciate that. And what I've come to realize about myself is that I have to talk about it from a bird's eye point of view. If I really like bring people through it, it is still triggering for me to walk them through it, because it's so visceral. Mm-hmm. And that's using visceral in the right way, not a viscera. But the long and short of it, if I can just sort of summarize it, is that as to be a part of DOS, this women's group that was I was invited to just before I left was I was supposed to get a tattoo as a part of an initiation ceremony, which is something that I really did not want, and was quite vocal about that. And Lauren, who brought me in, who's, I think it's important to know, is my best friend and my maid of honor and sort of like my therapist and also peer in the structure. I mean, not peer, she was not my peer. She was above me and also in charge of like any sort of promotion or any growth. So I kind of had to do what she said in that system. But she EM'd me, which we haven't talked about, which is basically the process of rational inquiry, which is the tool set used in ESP to evolve your belief system, which we haven't talked much about. But basically the whole curriculum is like your belief system has holes in the logic, and we're here to upgrade it and make it more consistent so you can operate optimally, right? And so she did an EM with me, Exploration and Meaning, about why I did not want, and this time we weren't even talking about a brand, which is what it ended up being. I didn't even know that humans got branded. I didn't even know that was a thing. She may have said when she was telling me that there's going to be a brand, all I remember was tattoo, because I don't have any tattoos. I did not want any tattoos. And so there was a whole EM around that. What does it mean to you to mark your body? And it was eventually I was like, well, okay, it's a symbol. She changed the meaning for me to the point that I accepted. It's a symbol for my growth on my body. It's my commitment. That's what I accepted. But the night of the tattoo initiation ceremony ended up being a brand. I'm going to leave people to the book to read the details of that and how horrific it was and painful. It was without anesthetic, and it was right here on my body. And it was found out later that it was filmed, and that was something that was used for future collateral, which is their term for blackmail, to make sure that I wouldn't speak about it and that I would have the requisite shame around that being recorded so that I wouldn't talk about it, which, by the way, is how all cults keep people quiet. Even if they leave, nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to say this happened to me, because then their shame is highlighted, especially if there's sexual stuff involved. So, yeah, the branding actually itself wasn't what woke me up. It's weeks later realizing that the symbol on my body, which I'd been told was a symbol for the elements, was actually Keith Raniere's initials in a cryptic monogram. That's what woke me up. And then the conversation with Mark, because I knew about the branding. He had been told that there was a secret group going on in Albany and that people were being invited, and then they were getting assignments, and that sex was involved. So keep in mind, we haven't discussed this, but when I joined NXIVM, I was told that Keith Raniere was a celibate renunciate. So evolved, like a monk, didn't need sex, didn't need attachments, didn't need money, because he didn't need anything from the outside world for joy, which was sort of like the theory of the underpinnings of NXIVM, like no, and also stolen from Buddhism, like nothing on the outside makes you happy, right? Sort of true in theory, but like, so I believe this about him. It's ridiculous now to look at his lifestyle and think that anyone ever thought he was celibate, but that was part of the branding around him, is to make him look like he would never do that. And anytime I did have a hint that he was with the women around him, I'd be like, that's so wildly inappropriate. Like, you don't, as a therapist and as a coach, as a counselor, you don't have sex with your students. And also just looking at him, I didn't think that was a realistic thing anyway. So no offense to the people that did that with him. But anyway, to answer your question, the branding, I think, was the demise of NXIVM, because now we have physical abuse. We have physical proof that he's abusing people, and so many years of emotional abuse. And I believe it was the branding, and then the article, I'm skipping a lot here, but getting out and going to the New York Times and showing the brand to a photographer from the New York Times and getting on the front page of the New York Times was what initiated the Eastern District of New York. Same district, same courthouse, by the way, where P. Diddy is right now. Same lawyer, by the way.
Wow. Same
lawyer defending Sean Combs is the same lawyer that defended Keith Raniere. Crazy choice on Puff Daddy's part, by the way.
Quite the president.
Yeah. Didn't do very well. But yeah, so the up until then, I believe that Keith Raniere was operating the same way. In fact, I spoke to somebody who left NXIVM about halfway through my time. She just like left to go pursue a doctorate, like didn't leave on bad terms as far as I knew. After I left, she contacted me, and she had shared that she was part of his harem and managed to sort of get away. People could leave if it was on good terms, and you know what I mean? It wasn't like locked doors, but if people could find an exit that was acceptable
And stay quiet.
it happened. Many people did leave. And she shared with me when she heard about DOS and how we were living in the readiness drills and people getting photos of them naked and things like that for blackmail. She's like, that's what life was like for her. And she left in, I want to say like 2008 or 9. So 10 years before this all fell apart. She was saying for her, life in the harem was like life in DOS. So basically he wanted to expand his control beyond his harem. He wanted all the women to be loyal, all the women to be blackmailed, all the women to have his initials on them. Like next level narcissistic delusion right there.
I mean, what a horrific thing to go through. You know, and I'm sorry you or anybody had to go through that.
Thanks.
But I was wondering about that as well, though. I was wondering if like the dissonance would be so great at that point that some members would be actually pushed deeper into commitment.
Yeah.
And if some would be actually at that point fully checked out and you know, get to that level of realization that you sometimes you have to go through something traumatic, right, to realize and break through to some new level of reality to say, actually, this isn't anything that I thought it would be, and now I need to get out.
Believe it or not, Mo, there are women out there. It's a handful of them. Actually, one of them lives in Vancouver, like 4 minutes that way on BD, if she still lives there. And I believe she's branded. I'm not sure. She's definitely in DOS. A lot of the branding got stopped because we kind of blew it up. I do know that there are women who are branded and are very happy they are branded. I'm talking about like 6. And yeah, they double down. They double down and they think that I'm exaggerating. They think that I knew exactly what I was getting into and then had regrets and I'm just having a tantrum, which is what women do. And this is exactly why DOS needs to exist, because of people like me. They think that. Wow. They have a website. You can look at their videos. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's a whole other level of misogyny. That's interesting.
Yeah, and delusion, and also it's cognitive dissonance at its best. For them to recognize really what ESP and NXIVM is and who Keith really is will also implicate them. And not necessarily that they're bad people, but they made really bad choices. I made a bad choice. When I left, I had to eat a huge shit sandwich and say, I fucked up. Now they have to say they fucked up, and they ignored all the evidence from the trial, and they like think that all of these people, that's not just me, many people left NXIVM, higher level than me. And they say we're all wrong. That's
the escalation of commitment, right?
Yeah. Well, they are the most committed, and they are waiting it out because they want to be the loyal soldiers who never left Keith's side, because there's going to be a payout for them one day. They think.
Yeah. So when you actually came out with the article, and you know, in this instance had physical evidence, like it's one thing to be a whistleblower with files, but you're carrying the physical mark as proof and evidence. What was it like dealing with media and law enforcement and getting this going? Because like, I'd like to believe that law enforcement, media, everybody just jumped on it right away. But
no,
sadly learned that was not the case.
It
must have been frustrating. So what was it like dealing with both media and law enforcement to try to get something started here?
Yeah, there were so many different stages. Like we went to the FBI first in Albany, and they were just like, this definitely sounds weird and dark, but like consensual. Like you asked for it. You know, like you said, would you brand me? Like, and I tried to explain, like I didn't know that he was involved. Like I was in a women's group, and then I found out that he's involved and he's looking at the video of this. Like this is like betrayal on such a crazy level, but like what's the illegal thing? You know, it's fucked up, but what's illegal about it? We also went to the health board in Albany that shut down the woman who did my branding, her license, who by the way,
she was a doctor.
Yeah. Who had her license removed, and she's still loyal. I can't talk about that because there's a civil case, but that's a separate thing. She's one of the few that are still loyal. And it wasn't until the article, and meanwhile, Mark Vicente and I were trying to get the police here to do something. And they were just like, they know it was like so out of their realm of training, you know? And then meanwhile, after the New York Times article came out, that's when I was asked to go to the FBI. That's in the vow, I believe. That's being flown to New York to go speak to the FBI. I spent 2.5 days with them, like in a room. I gave them all my computer, gave them my phone, like say, take whatever you want, and just tried to. I think I was the first one to speak to them, and I tried to give them the lay of the land of like how NXIVM worked and who everybody was. And that was after that, things moved very quickly. Like Moira Penza, the lead prosecutor there, who I'm still in touch with, and she's amazing, and actually has been on our podcast. I believe her and her team are the reason why everything moved so quickly and got Keith extradited. And there was a trial that was like 6 weeks. The jury deliberation was only 4 hours. It was very efficient. And I did not have to testify, thank goodness. I was supposed to at some point, but I was testifying against Lauren, but then Lauren turned. So Lauren was like the key witness.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm very grateful to that because I had a newborn at this time, my second babe, who's now 6. So big time frame.
You're able to have a lot of balls in the air.
Yeah. I seem to always be that way. It's maybe my Achilles heel.
What are your relationships like with past members? I mean, has there been any like healing? Have you guys come together, or is it just too fresh still?
I mean, at first we kind of got people together just to like share, and also we called them like bitch sessions because up until then you couldn't express anything negative about anybody, because especially upper ranks, because that would have been dishonorable. That's how Keith protected himself from sharing anything. Like, wait, isn't it weird that Keith, like, you couldn't do that? You'd be like in so much trouble. So we were able to share, like, you know, at that time when Nancy got mad at me for bringing too many gluten-free people to Albany, like, that's crazy. You know what I mean? Like, just to kind of like share, and people had to do it for me too, and like tell me how lame I was, which I was, because I was being trained by the upper ranks to be, you know, gaslighty, which I did, because that's how you got people in line. So I had to take a lot of that on the chin. That was that stage. But after that, I don't want to lead anything. I didn't want to bring people together, because I was still trying to be a leader. And not only did people not want me to be their leader, I didn't want to be the leader. And I'm just like a normal person. I'm not like someone's green sash, you know, just like Mark was above me as my green sash. And he used to call the shots. And all of a sudden I'm like, I don't have to do everything that you say, because I can do things that, like, so that's a change of dynamic in a friendship. Mark and I are totally friends now. And, you know, we both have our podcasts and we talk and everything's great. But there was a shifting process of like, okay, we're all just friends.
To recalibrate.
Yeah. I thought for a while about bringing people together and giving them getting them with a cult deprogrammer and giving them tools. But basically I just put it out to the community, like who needs legal support, who needs therapy. We provided free therapy for a while for people, and some of the proceeds of the book did that also. And we went on Cameo to bring extra funds in to get people therapy, because therapy is expensive and people were starting their lives again. So yeah, I mean, I think I've always tried to be available, and also that's partly what the podcast is for me. It's like it's a resource for people to understand how these things work and to understand what happened to them. So I in many ways I feel like I'm still kind of cleaning up the mess, but I don't want to bring people together because I don't really want to
play that role.
Yeah, I don't want to play that role.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah.
And what about beyond friends or like past members? You know, in your wider family, you talk about your parents in the book, and your mom, with your mom in particular, the conversations you had of both her being in one section you described that she saw you. I'm not sure if it was the green sash ceremony or which ceremony it was now, but you know, you invited her to this sort of ceremony where you're moving up to the next level, and you could tell that she wanted to be happy for you and express her pride in you, but she was also like just incredibly worried about what this was and what was going on. Yeah,
she was definitely very mixed. I mean, she knew that Keith was a megalomaniac. She knew that it was problematic, but nobody really knew how bad it was. And she also knew that she had to be supportive, otherwise I might cut her off. So she loves to tell me stories about all the things that she saw from the beginning. I go, yes, Mom, you were right. Mom, you're right. You're the smartest. That's for you, Mom.
And, you know, I mean, did your dad, was there anybody else in your family that had that had to witness this and then kind of come back around?
My dad actually took the curriculum and got the good parts of it and enjoyed it and like worked on his goals and started an invention and lost weight. But there were also some pretty key tenets that didn't sit right with him. So he never really went further, never became a coach or anything. And then we had other family members that were, kind of, I told you so. And that felt shitty. The people who were like, I'm just happy you're back, are the people who are still in our lives. Other people are like, I just don't really have the space or capacity to be around people that aren't like just happy that we're back.
I mean, I want to ask a bit of a weird question here.
I can handle it.
and this is on the topic of like, and the idea of transformation. Like, I'm firmly a believer that people that have gone through some serious shit in their lives, and I'm surrounded by them. I have, a lot of people that had, fucked up childhoods or at some point went through something really, really kind of dark and terrible. And then kind of came out of it, right? That's that darkest night story of, do you succumb? Do you persevere? Or do you, in some cases, actually kind of go through this like, chrysalis and now you're transformed into,
Yeah.
And, you wouldn't wish those experiences on anybody, like any childhood trauma. You wouldn't ever wish this on anybody. But then on the other hand, you kind of look at your life and what you're capable of. And it's like a lot of people I know, their superpowers lie on the other side of this really fucked up shit they went through, right? So is there any part of you that feels like, I don't want to say that you needed this, but that there was some superpower that arose out of this, right? Or that there was something, kind of inherently deficient or wrong with you previously that allowed you to be susceptible to this?
This is 3 questions.
Yeah, sorry. I'm forming the thoughts as we go. So maybe let's talk about the superpower first, right? Of, you went through this. Is there something that now you look at in your life and you go, actually, I have this other capability now. I wouldn't have had this otherwise.
100%. And in that way, I wouldn't change anything because, I mean, I can't say that I don't ruminate or have anxiety or whatever around like, what could I have I done in my 30s? Like I lost my 30s, my prime building years to this organization. And I worked hard, as you know. I hustled hard. I barely slept. And I wonder what I could have built had I focused elsewhere, focused on a legitimate company or a startup or a marketing company, like anything other than this. Where would I be? That's hard to not think about that. I can't imagine my world without my family, my kids and my husband that I met in NXIVM. So I don't go there very often. But in terms of superpowers, I mean, it's really wild and also ironic that so much of what we were doing in NXIVM was like overcoming your limiting beliefs, whatever. But who do you want to be? And the mission statement. Who do you want to be? And how are you going to do that? And what's it going to look like? And what are your steps to get there? And what's your character? This was like, the idea was that you could design your character. And if you say, I'm a compassionate person, but then you like snap at your family, you're not really a compassionate person. If you say that you have, balls or chutzpah, which is the word that I would use, but then you don't in certain situations, you don't really, it's just a theory. So Keith would say character is only character once it's tested. So I got to test my character. And ironically, one of the things, going back to the people pleasing, and next thing they called it like me disease, I had to like drop all that to do this. Like, think about putting yourself on the cover of the New York Times about the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you. The New York fucking Times saying I was in a sex cult. By the way, I didn't do the sex part of it. I just met my husband there. There was a sex part involved. Nobody, like half of the people that know my story think that I was having sex with Keith Raniere. Do you know what I mean? Because they just see the headlines. Like, that's awful. Do you understand how hard that is for someone who has like me disease? Like,
I can only imagine.
It's awful.
Yeah.
And I have to like clarify that. And here I am clarifying it again because I still want people to know that I didn't do that. But really, who cares? Yeah. Like, the point is he's in jail.
But there's some level of judgment that you've gotten over.
I've had to.
If you're on the New York Times saying I was a part of a sex cult.
Yeah. to end the sex cult.
Yeah.
And that's why people don't go out and do it, because they don't want to be associated with the fucking sex cult. And people have left and tried in the past. I wasn't the first to try, but we were the first to be successful, obviously, because he's in jail now. To answer your question, what are my superpowers? To know to do the hard thing when it needs to be done, I guess, is the superpower, and to stand up for what I believe in, even when it's really, really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's it. And to figure out what my character is that I do have balls. Not all the time. Sometimes I'm still, my inner voice is still.
I read the book.
Yeah.
Huge balls. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. But I need to, what I'm figuring out now is how to do that in like day-to-day interactions where I don't want to be rude, to speak my mind a little bit more.
Yeah.
It's a balance. But to answer that second part of your question was, what was my susceptibility?
Yeah.
So even since writing this book, I've learned more about that. And I feel like in some ways I wrote the memoir a little too early. Like, I'm glad I did, because it captured that moment in time. But since doing the podcast and talking to other cult survivors, I've learned so much more about my Achilles heels. So there's like the positive things. I was a seeker. I was into personal development. My parents are therapists. I wanted more community. I wanted personal development. I wanted meaning in my life. Really positive, wonderful, normal human things. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then there's more like, I don't want to say flaws, but like, I'm an only child and like being alone and wanted belonging. I like the good feeling I got from being in community. So it's not just community. It's like, what do I get from that? And then in many ways, the power or the feeling of popularity that I got going up the ranks and like running this group and being the leader, that was incredibly intoxicating.
Yeah. And
definitely drove me. And then also what we talked about earlier, the gold star. I've always been driven by even when I was in Brownies, like getting the patches on I don't know if you did Brownies or Boy Scouts, you get little patches for achieving things. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with the stripes. Like, I want the gold star, I want the validation, versus me giving myself the validation. That's why I give myself the gold star now. So I'm not like searching from other people. Do you like me? Do you think what I did is good? Which is hard also when you're doing a podcast, because you need external validation or approval from your audience. So it's like, it's constant balance. Mm-hmm. But I think those are the things that made me susceptible. And just wanting, just like, the desire to feel special and seen, and they gave me all that. Mm-hmm. They gave me all that.
And how are things and the project's progressing now? Like, you're sharing your message. You're getting a lot of engagement with Little Bit Culty.
Yeah.
The book Scarred.
Yes, Scarred has been out for 5 years. I still talk about it. People still find it and want to talk about it, which is great. It's actually ended up as sort of like resources in a lot of cultic studies. As like, I'm often now as an interviewer on my podcast reading a new book about brainwashing or cult history, and then they're referencing like, as Sarah Edmondson learned in Scarred. I'm like reading, it's just like super surreal. From an academic point of view, this has become a resource, which is like great for me in terms of like feeling good about like I'm glad I did it. Yeah. Legally, our case is precedent setting and is used as reference for prosecutorial like strategy with,
incredible.
Epstein and P. Diddy and R. Kelly, like how to use the RICO as and legal is not my forte, but that's my understanding, using RICO as a template to get people on like emotional abuse. Coercive control is not illegal yet in all states. Is legal in like Australia and UK, and I believe it's changing here in Canada. Coercive control, which is emotional manipulation. Anyway, you asked me a question. Oh, the book, the podcast, over 200 episodes. It's very fulfilling. It's very rewarding. We are always on, so it's a full-time job. It's on every Monday, and bonus drops on Thursday. And we have Patreons. We're trying to like always come up with bonus content for our audience, which is how we can afford to make the podcast because we're not independently wealthy. Mm-hmm. Surprise, surprise. I stopped acting. I still do voiceover, which helps with the podcast. And then now Nippy and I are doing a second book, which is all the lessons we've learned since starting the podcast and trying to package it up so we can give to people, because people reach out and they're like, oh my goodness, I just got out of a cult, or my sister's getting into a cult. What do I do? Or I'm getting out and I want to whistleblow. Like, please give me advice. And I'm like,
how frequent and common is this?
Oh, daily.
You're kidding.
Daily, all the time. And I have a resource list. It's on our website of like all these books to read and podcasts to listen to and docuseries to watch and foundations to reach out to. And I wanted to, those things are still valuable. I'm not saying don't do it, but I also wanted to just give people a resource to cover the whole gamut, how to avoid, how to understand the template, how to get out, how to heal, how to whistleblow, all in one place. So that's what that book is. And will be out in the fall.
I mean, I'm kind of surprised, but then on the other hand, maybe not. Because like, when do you hear about a cult? It's after decades of abuse have occurred.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess on some level, if that cycle can be shortened so that when these personalities arise and start to first manipulate and control people, that hopefully they can be recognized and thwarted or in some way interrupted earlier.
Yeah. Most of the time there's a death, like somebody, someone in the group commits suicide or overdoses or whatever because they can't handle whatever has come up for them. And then it gets sort of public scrutiny. But there's so many groups. There's thousands and thousands of groups in North America alone that we know about that are operating just below that level because they haven't done anything illegal yet. Just people being controlled and their lives are insular and they're like doing everything for this leader. And that's such a big like talking point for us in our podcast is that we don't even want to use the word cult anymore sometimes because people get like an image.
They write it off and they put it at a distance, right?
Yeah.
That's something other people fall for.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then they tell me that like, but I go to Soul Cycle and I'm like, I'm so culty because that I can list off all these things. It's not a full on destructive cult where people are drinking poison Kool-Aid or Flavor Aid as the case was with Jonestown. But there's a lot of dynamics that are happening in there that are super problematic and you'd want to know what they are. So you know where the line is for you. So that's sort of that's our main thing right now is like understanding what the behaviors are in the group that are problematic or toxic so people can decide, is this healthy for me? Maybe they want to be in a group where they're totally controlled and every aspect of their life is decided for them. If that works for you, great. But you might be being exploited and you might want to understand where your money's going or, what's happening behind closed doors. And these are the questions that we want people to start thinking about for themselves because they don't. And because they think it would never happen for them, they're very susceptible.
Is there anything that you're seeing right now that you're excited about?
In the world?
In the world in terms of whether it's helping disrupt cults or cultish behavior or in your work, but what do you see going on right now that's giving you some hope and inspiration?
I'd say just the fact that like cult documentaries are still being made, people are still wanting to learn and understand is really good, and that the laws are changing around coercive control. That gives me hope.
Coercive control isn't a term I'd even heard before.
So and for those who don't understand, I think that the dynamic that most people do get is like in a toxic relationship where there's let's say domestic violence. The person who is the controller wants to undermine the controllee. It's usually a man woman. Obviously it can be otherwise, but tends to be a man overpowering a woman and wanting to overcome their autonomy and erode their sense of self slowly over time so they have full control. So, monitoring their texts or telling them what they can do and not do. And in many ways, a cult is a macro of that micro. If people don't say to them like, why doesn't she just leave anymore? Because they know there's lots of reasons. They're dependent. Maybe they're still in love. Maybe they're not abusive all the time. And those good moments keep them in, or there's promises for the future. Same thing with cults. It's the exact same thing. So the coercive control is the manipulative patterns that is done by the abuser to erode the autonomy and destroy the self-esteem and have the person be under control. Slowly, coercive is slowly over time, and like the frog in the pot of water is an analogy people get. Yeah.
Turn it up half a degree at a time.
Yeah.
The frog doesn't know it's being boiled alive.
And the answer to that, like when you look at the P. Diddy trial right now, people say things like, I don't know if you're following it, but like Cassie chose to be there. She could have left. Yes, there's no locked doors, but they don't understand all the things that go on with the power dynamic. It's a power dynamic. Same thing with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Thank you. And like, regardless of what happened there, he's still in charge. He's still the most famous. P. Diddy is the most famous compared to all those women. Whatever he says goes. And a lot of those women stayed because they were afraid. And they're texting things like, can't wait for the next freak off. And that's being used against them. And I'm saying, if you looked at my text to Lauren, I was doing the same thing. Can't wait to see you. Love you. Because I'm just trying to not rock the boat and make things okay so I can get the fuck out. So I understand that when I look at it. But anyone who doesn't understand those dynamics is thinking, well, why did she just go? She's an idiot.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited that the world is starting to see that somebody like Cassie is a victim and can still text that and understand the dynamics that are happening there. It's also very upsetting because people like Bill Maher, I don't know if you've heard, I'm going on a tangent here, I'm sorry, but
No, go for it.
Bill Maher is saying things like, you know, in the era of Me Too, this is post Me Too, she should have left, but this happened to her pre Me Too. Like there's just so many misconceptions about coercion and these dynamics that really get me fired up. And I wish that people would understand more, but I do feel hope that the light is being shone there and hopefully it will continue to evolve into the next era of Me Too, which by the way was happening as we were leaving. I don't know if we would have had the same success had it not been just after Harvey Weinstein being exposed. It was like literally in the news cycle, same news cycle.
Yeah, I'm sure the timing helped.
Timing helped. Yeah.
What's next for you?
You know, I'm not sure. I this book is like on its final edit right now, and then we'll be promoting the shit out of it in the fall and still doing our podcast. We have this amazing network. We have a huge audience that loves our stuff. So we're not going to stop doing it, but I also want to do other things. And I feel like this chapter is coming to a close and I don't know what it is totally that's next, but I'm open to something.
What's the next book called?
Right now, this is the other thing is that we're not 100% on the title. There's something about it that doesn't capture the whole thing because we're covering a lot of ground. So right now it's called A Little Bit Culty, which is our brand. And maybe as a brand expert, you can advise me here.
I mean, A Little Bit Culty for the podcast. I love the name.
Yeah.
I just loved it.
It is a great title or a name for a podcast. A Little Bit Culty. And right now the subheading is Navigating Cults, Control, and Coercion, or Protecting Yourself from Cults, Control, and Coercion. And neither of those things to me encapsulate the whole thing. Because I want it to be for somebody who would I hope our audience would buy it because they love us and they want to support us. But I also want it to be for somebody being like, oh, I would like to learn about cults and how to avoid getting out of one. Or maybe if I'm in one, how to get out of one. I just don't know what that title is. So
we'll talk after the podcast.
Okay, we'll brainstorm a little bit. Thank you. So that's what it is currently. It is available for pre-order. We're working on the cover design. And I think I might want to go back to acting a little bit. But I also don't want to audition. So offers only. That's my joke. Not a joke. I just want to work. I don't want to hustle. I'm too tired. I'm almost 50. I'm going to be 50 in 2 years.
And you hustled like crazy.
I hustled like crazy.
A very long time.
I don't want to hustle anymore. I want to have a simple life.
You deserve it.
Thank you.
I think I'm closing. I'm going to go back to this.
Okay.
Not to make you cry, but just because I think it's so beautiful. And it's just such a beautiful intent to hold. And, you know, maybe it can serve as a reminder to you, but hopefully it'll, help others that hold a similar intent and want to do something like this in the world. So Sarah Edmondson's mission statement from 20 years ago, one more time. My mission is to use and develop my creative and entrepreneurial skills to build value in a joyous, compassionate, inspiring way, to share the values of growth and introspective as I learn to know and love myself, and to create world-changing force that inspires awareness, love, and peace, and consequently evolves humanity.
Well, I won't cry again.
Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. I'm looking forward to everything that you're going to do. For anybody that wants to know, the current book that was written 5 years ago, it's out now, called Scarred. And you have an HBO documentary called The Vow. I highly recommend the book.
Thank you.
You're a vivid writer.
Thanks.
And it was cliche. It was a page turner.
Really?
What's going to happen next? Holy shit. Page after page. It was incredible. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
What a book. What a life. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's on the Audible. I narrate too. If anyone doesn't like to read, which I don't anymore. I can't sit still. So I only listen to books. So yeah, it's there. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I appreciate reading the whole book and look at all your notes. Dying to know what you noted.
A lot of things. Yeah. I mean, again, we weren't going to get to it all in this conversation. We could have done, I think, multiple parts because there were so many veins in this. But I think we touched on the parts that mattered. And yeah, I mean, you're honestly definition of high agency. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful that we got a chance to connect and share this time together.
What a gift. Thank you. I enjoyed it so much.
Well, hopefully we've given you a lot to think about. That was High Agency. Like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.